This conference will now be recorded.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this special meeting of the County Commissioners. We have Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Moore, and Commissioner Walter here. Commissioner Kelly is out today. I guess I don't have an agenda, so I'm shooting it from the hip. We got a couple of items that we need to address real quickly. I'm gonna bring number one, Mr. Hardy. He has a medical situation he's got to get to, so I'm gonna bring Tommy up, and you're first up, sir.
Thank you. I want to thank Donnie for allowing me to come before y'all today, and I want to thank y'all for listening. Real quick on the election world, we're 32 days out before early voting and 47 before the actual election day. We're gearing up. We're wide open. We'll be mailing out military and overseas Friday. We're approving ballots today. It's just we're wide open, and as of right now, we have 2,022 vote by mail ballots. That's pretty regular with a presidential. I see that number growing a good bit between now and the election. But anyway, what I'm here about today is the roof. I know y'all talked a little bit about it at the last county commissioners meeting, and to go to bid and that process. But with 32 days between now and election, that's almost a 14-day process. I'm gonna beg y'all if we can go ahead and make a decision. I reached out to a lot of roofers. Most of them are 3 months to 6 months out. Most of them didn't even want to talk about it. We put a thing on our Facebook. If you're interested in putting a roof on our building, give us contact us. We never heard from anybody. We got declined. Billy sent Southern Metal to us to talk to us, and at first he was gung-ho, and then the guy called me back and said, no, I'm not interested. Ogles Roofing wasn't interested. Those are the ones that we heard back from. But Curtis Johnson can start right away. His bid was under $19,000. And what he's doing is whoever put that flat roof on there, if you go out there anytime it rains, it holds water. It's like a swimming pool up there. They didn't level it out or slope it or any of that. And so we got 3 leaks in it, and then where it does pour off the roof, it pours off in one spot. And we didn't realize that the leaks were in there because it was the other side until we took that side on. But what they're going to do is raise the roof up. They talked to the building department, raise it up, put a tin roof so it's got a slope roof on it. Another thing is the big roof above it, all that water comes off on that one flat roof. So we're going to run the gutter down to the ground so it doesn't even have to go onto that. And then they're going to come off of a 8-foot small roof coming off, doing an overhang to help keep water from rolling back on those doors and that kind of stuff. So I'd love for y'all to go ahead or I'm begging y'all to go ahead and let's let Curtis, he's done a bunch of work. He did the remodeling for us. Let him go ahead and start. He can start right away.
Any questions or comments?
Not really, Mr. Chair. With the hurricanes that are looming out there now, and this is the wet weather, can we declare this an emergency?
Yes, sir. I think that's within your discretion. If you find that you don't have time to go through the bid process before the election.
But you have reached out to several vendors trying to get somebody, and we document that.
Yes, sir.
Motion to give it to Curtis Johnson.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Martin, second by Commissioner Moore to award this job to Curtis Johnson.
And do you have a dollar amount?
It was just under 19,000. I'm sorry.
So not to exceed 19 would do it.
That suits you, not to exceed that. Okay. Any more discussions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Good luck today. All right, Mr. Reeves, I understand we need to move into the Gulf Power easement.
Yes, sir. If I
Well,
may.
a conflict, yes, if you would, please.
Passed out as a contract for sale of easement, and just to kind of give you an idea of how the contract's set up, it's like a contract for sale of real property, but instead of conveying property with a deed, what we're doing is we're giving them an easement. So the first document attached, so this is the contract on the front. The contract itself is 5 pages. The very next document is an easement, and that's for 3 pages. And then we get into drawings and, that have legal descriptions and all that, okay? So the deal had been struck before it was given to me that we would give an easement to Gulf Power for the $287,800. So that's the purchase price on the front page of the contract. The easement is, and you can, if you look at the attachments to the easements, you can see they've got drawings there of the properties. What it is our properties from the Lee exit on over to the 53 exit, just basically going right above the interstate there. And it's an easement on the properties that we have. Now, we're not guaranteeing to them we own the properties, we're just giving them an easement. We're saying, you know, that we're selling our rights to those properties. The easement would allow them to place, and we're very exact in this language, would allow them to, for the construction, operation, maintenance of electric transmission lines supported by one linear series of monopoles, so not the H-frames, but just the one monopoles, with all rights necessary and convenient, including wires, poles, pads, conduits, communication lines, to be used for the operation and maintenance of the transmission lines. One of the issues that came up, and it's several years ago, I've been doing this a long now, several years ago, maybe 20 years ago now, but it was several years ago. The electric companies got in trouble because they got easements for electric lines, and then they were running telephone lines on them, right? And so there was a big issue with that, and so that's why that specifically is worded that way. They can do communication lines just for the operation of their electric lines. It's an all necessary appurtenant equipment, and so that's all that's going to be there. Now, we specifically put in there, if you go to page 2 of the easement, that they're provided, so we're giving them the right to put the poles there, provided no poles or other surface structure shall be placed in any area where they conflict with existing underground water and or wastewater pipes. Because remember, in that area, we've got water and wastewater pipes where we've run water and wastewater services down to we participated in the cities running those utilities down to the interstate, so we want to be very clear on that. Number 2, provided that no poles or other surface structures shall be placed in or unreasonably close to the traveling surface of an existing road or driveway. A lot of these easements are drawn so that they include our roads because that was the easier way to draw it, which is fine, but they just can't put a pole in the road, obviously. And then they can't be unreasonably close. Now, what does unreasonably close mean? The next, in the parentheses, it says, for the purpose of this paragraph, a pole or other surface structure shall be deemed to be placed unreasonably close to the traveling surface of a road or driveway if its placement would not be allowed under the standards set out in the then current edition of the Florida Department of Transportation Design Manual. So what that does is it specifically incorporates FDOT's design manual. If FDOT would allow the pole to be this close to an FDOT road, then that's fine. That's what we're agreeing to do. You know, and that's kind of the gold standard. I mean, that's what the engineers would look to. If you asked an engineer, is this a safe place for the pole to be, they would look to the DOT. Okay. We've got in here that they're not going to restrict the vehicular access through the easement. They're not, let's see, if their use results in any damage to the improvements within the easement, they're going to repair and replace it. And I think that's and then we're giving it with all faults and as is. We're not guaranteeing anything. We're not guaranteeing it's in any particular shape. I mean, they're all big boys. They've gone and looked at it and done whatever they need to do. And then we've got attached to it the final description. Now, Madam County Manager, has Lonnie and Steve looked at the final attachment? Okay. What I would suggest we do, if y'all are okay with it, is let's approve it. Subject, but let Lonnie and Steve have one last look, because I got this from the other side a day or two ago, and just let them look and make sure that we're okay with that. Now, as far as the contract goes, what the contract does is a little bit different than a normal, like a real estate contract. Normally, a real estate contract, you have a closing agent. The closing agent gets all the documents, gets all the money, is holding everything at once, and then goes and records the documents and passes out the money. And what we've got in this case is that we're going to execute, once everyone signs the contract, so we've got a signed contract that's enforceable, then we're going to send Gulf Power the easement. They then have 10 days to send us the money. And then once they send us once they get the easement and we get the money, then they're going to drop us from the eminent domain case. That's resolved, and now that, each side pays its own attorney's fees and costs in the eminent domain case. That's, all those things that we could get are included in the 287 figure that we're being paid. Okay, and then they're going to pay all closing costs. They pay the doc stamps and the recording costs, and anything. If they want each surveys or if they want environmental inspections, that's fine, but they pay for all that. Again, we're saying no realtors. Nobody owes a realtor commission. As is, where is. We're not guaranteeing anything. We're not guaranteeing title. And I think that's it. So if you're good with it, I request that you approve the contract. What you're doing is you're approving the contract for sale. The contract then authorizes the chair to go ahead and sign the easement, so you don't have to do that separately. You're approving the contract for sale, and but subject to letting us have Lonnie and Steve look at those descriptions one more time. If there were an issue with that, we'd have to bring it back to you. I don't anticipate there's an issue, but I just don't want to send it if they haven't, finally looked at it and blessed the descriptions.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Does anyone have any questions or comments of Mr. Reeves?
All right, Mr. Chair, Jerome from the city, if I may.
Yes, sir. Mr. Jerome, you have the floor, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. When Lonnie and Bill Steves take a look at the plans, would you permit my water and wastewater superintendents to also take a look? And I think there has to be some locates to make sure that those two utilities are not disturbed. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. We'll make sure that you get a copy of it as well.
Okay, sir. Super. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Any more discussions or questions of Mr. Reeves before we move forward?
Mr. Chair, if a motion is in order, I move that we approve it contingent upon the approval of the road department.
Okay. Motion's made by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Martin, to move forward to provide this documentation to Lonnie and Bill and Jerome, and if everybody is suitable, then we will follow suit.
And we go ahead and sign it.
And we'll go ahead and sign it today, contingent on that. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carries 4-0.
Okay. And I have one more thing, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
We've also passed this out. There was also another issue with Gulf Power. There's two there, if you would. And there's another issue where they were going to make a donation to the county concerning an ambulance. Now, this is the donation agreement, and obviously we wanted to go ahead and have that in writing where everybody knew their rights and responsibilities on that. So with this donation agreement, and now the two contracts are not contingent on one another. They're not related like that, but we do want to get everything nailed down at one time, and so that's why we're bringing it today. What this one says is that they're going to, that Gulf Power is going to donate $250,000 to the county, that the county is going to use that to purchase an ambulance, associated equipment, related parts, et cetera. And so they are going to give us the money. We agree that we're going to take the money. The money's ours, but we're only going to use it to purchase an ambulance and the parts and everything. Now, that is all accomplished through paragraph 2. Now, paragraphs 3 through 16 are us saying that we have total and complete liability for the ambulance. If something happens with the ambulance, they can't be sued, and if they're sued, we indemnify them, which I think is fair. They're giving us free money,
Sure.
And that's fine. But anyway, that's what all of that is for. So they're giving us money, we're buying an ambulance. Once we get the ambulance, it's 100% ours. The liability is 100% ours. If somebody figures out a cute way to sue them, we're going to have to indemnify them because it's 100% ours. Okay, and so that's now the one change though I believe, and the county manager had said that she'd been in contact with the, folks with Gulf Power, and they were requesting that for tax purposes or some purpose, that, the money be paid, after the first of the year.
Yes,
I
that's
think.
correct.
And I don't think that matters to us. I think, and do you know the schedule on the delivery of the ambulance? at all?
Yes, it's gonna be after January 1 anyway, before we have the complete ambulance put together.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, if y'all are, of a mind to, is on number 2, it says the donor, which is Gulf Power, shall deliver and pay the funds, which is defined as the $250,000, by wire transfer or local certified check to the donee no later than 10 days after the effective date. Instead of 10 days after the effective date, I think we could just make that January 10, 2021, right? And so then they'll provide that no later than January 10, 2021. Does that sound right, County Manager? So if y'all could approve it with that change, and, again, we would get everything approved on both contracts and send them both at the same time.
Bring our motion to. Second. With that change.
Commissioner Martin makes a motion to accept this agreement with a change on item 2, second by Commissioner Davis. Any discussions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 4-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
I think, we can say that, Gulf Power has, shown that they're trying to be a part of the community, and we appreciate what they've done, and we look to be a good host county, and they're a good business that we'll work together in the future. Moving to item number 3, we will be bringing DSI up and discussing the Madison Cares project and, where we're at today. Thank you.
First off, good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank the board for your time and consideration today as we present our proposal for the SBA grant application. So today, I have with me Harold Joyner and Joe Myers. Also, Dan Shepard and Kaylee Plants will not be able to be with us today, but they will be with us next week and going forward. So today, pretty much we want to go through the grant timeline, discuss the application, the small business application, which you have in your packet, and also discuss some of the criteria and eligibility options that we have available. All right. So I'll begin with pretty much the phases, found on page 2. So phase 1, pretty much 9/15 yesterday, 2 days ago, we completed the draft, and we were able to send it to the board for review. Today, like I said, the whole point is to go through the application to verify some of the requirements that we're going to issue. Phase 2, pretty much going to release the application on the county website. That Monday, the outreach plan will be implemented by the county. We can go over that today as well. THF and DSI is willing to assist in any way that we can and make sure that we get this message out to the community. All right, so we move down to 9/29 and October 1st, where, like I was mentioning, THF and DSI will be on site to help out with those applications. The deadline for the receipt of applications is going to be 9/28, so this is something that we pretty much want to bring to you all's attention. We can either do a 2-week window or a 1-week window, depending on what you all decide. We suggested a 2-week window just because it would give a little more time for the businesses to apply for the grant. Any questions or recommendations on that?
I think the 2-week window is the right way to go on that.
Okay, so we'll solidify that date to be 10/1, 10/5, I apologize.
Okay.
10/5, okay. All right, moving into phase 3, pretty much will be that following, well, that Monday, like I said, we'll be on site to review the applications. The documentation review and pretty much following up with any applicants, phone calls, emails to get anything that we may be missing to make sure that we can, we don't prolong the process. All right, then we move, phase 4, where it says a special board meeting, that is to be determined if it may be necessary, it may not be necessary, depending on what the board would like to do around that time.
Can I ask you one question
Yes,
real
sir.
quick, because it was asked to me? So this, 9/29 and 10/1, that'll be when we were talking about doing a workshop here where the small businesses can come in and.
Yes, sir.
get
So
their
pretty much,
questions answered.
right, we'll be on site, like we've been here before, and meeting with the stakeholders or anybody who would like to come in and apply for the application, who may not necessarily know what they're doing.
Does that answer your question, Brian?
The application will be online ahead of time,
Yes, sir, it will
so
be.
have it ready for the workshop.
Right.
Well, while we're on that subject.
Yes, sir.
We've got the website, and I'm sure the local newspaper.
Yes, so that'll be, we'll discuss that today as well. THF and DSR pretty much will be here to support, the county in that motion. So, it's pretty much up to you guys how you wanna get it out there, but we'll be here to assist and give recommendations if possible.
Definitely need to have it in the paper both,
Right.
both issues that week, or run it as often as we can.
Okay.
Okay, and so pretty much the round two will be optional. It'll be, only applicable if, depending on the amount of the response we get from round one. So if we get, enough applicants to where we can go through them and we're able to disperse the full amount of money, then that'll be great. We won't need to do a round two.
So there is a round two option if we have additional funds.
Yes, sir. Sir, so pretty much once round one comes and we're able to review, check, that'll be pretty much phase three. So when we'll be scoring the applicants, reviewing their applications, and going back to review documentation, if it gets to the point where we realize we have too many applicants or more than enough, then we'll just cut it off at, round one and won't go into round two. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you have on here 9/29 to 10/1 on-site office hours?
Yes, sir.
That means you guys would be here. What do people do if they need assistance? Who are they calling?
So we have, hold on one second.
I don't know if that's somewhere else later.
Right.
If it's later, don't worry about it.
Okay,
We'll get
okay.
to it. Fine. I just wanted to.
Yeah, we will be able to, answer phone calls or emails that go directly to THF
Okay.
and then forward to us. Okay. So now we can move into the program criteria and eligibility requirements. That'll be on the page with the three options and the PPP option as well. And in the packet, there is the SBA grant application form, and behind that page is the PPP grant application. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's only with the PPP option. So pretty much, we are recommending that the application provide two funding options and an additional option for the PPP option. So option one, the requirements listed are the requirements that pretty much we heard from the stakeholders and from the board. So we added options 2 and 3 just to add additional requirements in case you wanted to add them to option one. And then the items that are highlighted are the items that we need to solidify and approve. So that just in case we need to make corrections, we can make them to the application before posting next week. So I'll go through option one. First one says business in Madison County since February 29th. Option 2 says since January 1st of 2020. And option 3 says business in Madison County since January 1st, 2019. Would we like to change that, or is that fine with everybody?
I'm fine with
Okay.
February 29th.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Next, we have the amount of employees at the business. The first option says 100, the second says 50, and the third says 25. We went with the 100 just to stay broad, and then I guess in round 2, if we needed to narrow it down.
So if you had a corporation who have embedded in their corporation several business names, they would do an application for each business name?
Technically, probably something we would have to look into, but I would assume they would just do one maybe, since they have this under one company.
I mean, we do have some, corporate businesses here that run, you know,
That have some.
Numerous,
Yeah.
all under one umbrella. If you lump them into one, then they
maybe
would
more
be
than 100
limited.
people.
Yeah, but they would also be limited to possibly one payout
Right.
versus,
Which is true.
yes, sir.
I think your bottom requirement that they filed an income tax return is probably gonna fix that, because remember, they're gonna have one tax ID number, and they're gonna file one income tax return for that tax ID number, even if they've got different, names and different, doing business as. If they've got truly separate corporations and file truly separate income taxes, then yeah, they're probably gonna be entitled to get a separate award if each of those separate entities, meets these criteria. But I think a lot of that's gonna be fixed with just requiring the income tax return, because that's gonna show, the one entity.
Right, okay.
Then it also give other businesses a chance to apply and won't just limit it to just one particular company.
I have a question too.
Yes.
Whenever you said earlier about February 29th, did you mean that across the board for all options?
The other two say January 1.
Right.
They say January 1 of 2020 and January 1 of 2019,
So I took it as we were just gonna do the February 29th and.
across all options.
Right.
I just want to make sure that's what they were intending.
Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't clear enough on me.
So we change it January 1st on option 2 and 3 to, February 29th also, is that my understanding?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so the next criteria says basically that the business has received less than $100,000 in PPP and other assistance, and pretty much that threshold changes, goes from 100,000 to 25,000 to 0. Would we like to leave that threshold at 100,000? Like to change it? We recommend like we say, option 1 is going to be your broadest option, just so that we can
Right.
get as many.
Capture more
Exactly,
applicants.
exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
100, see that one?
Yeah.
Consensus, we'll stay with that.
Okay. All right. So pretty much the difference between the PPP option and the remaining 3 options is that any business that received PPP can only apply for this option. There's not, you can't do one of the, you can't do both, pretty much. It's going to be one or the other. And the PPP businesses are only eligible to receive 2% of their PPP. Yes,
Yes, sir, Ben.
That's a highlighted thing. If you remember last week, we talked about that, and we were kind of just throwing out hypotheticals. And, I don't remember the lady's name that was here.
Haley?
No, not Haley, it's the other.
Nicole.
Okay.
And she pointed out that you only had 139 businesses that received PPP or something like that, so it's about $3.9 million in Madison. If they were below $200,000 or something like that.
Right.
I mean, I don't remember the exact requirements, but it ended up being $3.9 million. And if you move that to 10%, then you're reserving $400,000 to people who receive PPP. And the thing that was attractive to a business owner is that they aren't giving you their tax return that becomes public record.
Right.
You know what I mean? So a lot of it, coming from my perspective, whenever I was a business owner, I would way rather go out and receive PPP, it's going to be 10%, than give you guys my tax return and now all of a sudden it's a public record. I don't know if you want to increase that number and let us hold it and put another stipulation on it, like they can get 10%, but there's only for businesses who receive less than X amount in PPP. You know, something to that extent. I don't know, you have a business owner here who may or may not have received PPP, he may want to weigh in on that. You have another one here who may or may not have received PPP, he may want to weigh in on that.
Can you explain to them what PPP is?
Yeah, so PPP is basically the payroll protection plan, money received to reimburse lost payroll during the COVID-19.
Yeah, that was the first program that came out, is that correct?
Yes, sir. So, I guess pretty much our focus is we want to target the businesses mostly that necessarily did not receive any funds, because they would need the assistance the most. So if we receive if we receive more applicants, or if when we're doing the, check, if we don't receive enough applicants, then we'll move on to make sure that we get the PPP applicants. But if we receive more applicants that did not receive PPP at all, then we're just gonna stick with those applicants because they need the assistance the most.
I think that's one thing we had looked at, trying to help the smaller businesses that may not have received PPP.
Exactly.
Yes, sir, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, you might want to then, save that percentage that you're gonna put in that last option, because let's say you go through options 1, 2, and 3, you may then want to set that percentage by kind of what's left.
What's left over in the bucket.
And that way you're doing what you're saying is the folks that didn't get any PPP, give them the shot first.
Okay.
But then if they don't apply and you got money left,
Yeah.
there's no reason you can't set that percentage based
Well,
on.
if the ones that did, that did get PPP, at least they have got some assistance.
Right.
Some got nothing, so.
That's right. Or, one way you could do it is just put an asterisk at that 2%, put subject to adjustment, after the.
Subject to funds.
Subject to funds or subject to
I
adjustment.
like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Suitable? Okay.
All right, and then we have the next threshold, which is basically determining how much the amount of award that we will give to the small business. So it starts at $2,500, then it goes to $5,000, and then it is approached on a tiered approach, basically determining off of how many employees they have at the company. So we recommend that pretty much we do a range, 25 to 5,000. And then we also have the option to do the tiered approach depending on what you decide. So, and pretty much the cost will be to cover things such as employee wages, vendor bills, rent, utilities, safety costs, pretty much to offset the loss due to COVID. So, we recommend the 25 to 5,000 amount just because it'll give you the biggest range of applicants that you can award to.
When you say the 25 to 5,000.
Yes, sir.
Are you saying 25 or 5,000? I'm not following.
Range? Yeah, range. So it'll be.
So what determines that range?
We have our criteria on. So if you check the page that says Madison County Small Business Application, the process of the selection, you go all the way to the bottom. It'll describe pretty much how we're going to do the process. So it'll depend on the business's eligibility once we go through all the documents that they turn in, and it can be a flat 2,500 or it can be a double, which is 5,000. But if it's 5,000, the only thing is we'll be limiting how many, like I said, how many applicants we can add.
So once you get the applications, then when you come back to us, you will make a recommendation as to the funding level.
Yes, sir.
Does that, everyone understand that? Okay. I like that.
Okay.
Range.
And then the last option basically just says they have to have filed IRS income tax return in 2019. I pretty much think we want that.
I'm pretty sure the question I'm gonna ask is in here somewhere, and I haven't had a chance to read all of it, but, what's the window for getting this application back in?
Okay, so let's go back to so if you go to the same page, Madison County Small Business Application, we have pretty much this lists out all of the directions for the applicant to know in order when to return the application back and how to fill it out. So the window, right here, well, it's tentative. It's another highlighted item. We said before close the business 5 p.m. October 5th, and that can be extended or pushed back, if you would like. And you see that's on Madison County Small Business Application in the middle.
Right.
At 10-5.
Yes, sir, the fifth highlighted item.
Okay.
And then it also states that whether you send it, paper or via mail, if you send it via mail, it must be delivered by 5 p.m. October 5th.
Okay.
And if you're doing a paper application, then it needs to be in September 21st, that Monday. If you want to change those dates, then we can.
Starting on Monday the 21st and delivered by the 5 p.m. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we on this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm on.
I don't have a Dropbox.
Okay.
The clerk's office doesn't have a Dropbox. That's one thing.
Get that out of this morning.
That's one thing I'm concerned about. What about people who want to email who are they emailing that to? To you guys, Madison Cares?
Yes. Yes. And those will have to be in, like we said, between that Monday, 21st, and then October 5th as well.
Is there a way, so their packets are getting picked up at my office, I guess, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that, it says they were also on the website, I saw that somewhere. Oh, right there, online applications are available. That's my website, MadisonClerk.com. Is there a way to also make the county's website? I mean, they're available in both places. I mean, because it's the county giving the money, not me, and I want to make sure that you guys are getting the credit for this.
And they'll probably read maybe the counties or the clerks.
Exactly. I mean, it's fine with me either way. I'm just saying I would make sure they get some information from the county.
I think that definitely needs to be on ours.
Because what's going to happen is people are going to go to that website, get an application. When they have questions, they're going to be calling my office rather than over here or.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, because I don't have the staff to handle the phone calls is what's going to happen.
It might be better to put a redirect on the clerk's website that
To the
says
I thought about that.
applications available at the county's website, and then that way everybody understands it's not.
The same guy does my website and does the county's website. I can just have him, when you click that link at my website, it goes to the county's website. I mean, I can have him do
That
that.
would make it obvious to applicants.
And that way, I mean, if it's there, I mean, anything they put in there, they're going to get redirected to the county, basically. That's kind of, I don't mind being the depository or anything like that, that's fine. I just
Is
don't
it
want
possible to do the same thing with like leads through the emergency management? Because a lot of that stuff, funding through emergency management could have a redirect from there as well.
Does he do y'all's website also?
It's part of the county.
It's part of the county.
Oh, it's part of the
county.
I mean, we could put it on,
It's a page, and then, okay.
we could just have him put it on everything that he does. I mean, he does the Chamber of Commerce.
We just want to make sure everybody has.
TDC, he does the counties, he does mine. I mean, he does several, I'm pretty sure he does the cities. I mean, if the city wanted to.
That would be good to
agreeable with
have.
that.
I think it'd be good for the cities
I
too.
mean, that way it
Yeah.
gets, I'm
Because the
I'm
bulk of
certain-
the businesses
And I'm
will be
fairly
in-
certain he does the city of Greenville too, but I may be wrong about that. They all
Well,
look similar, so I'm assuming that
If
he
there's
does.
any way we can get this kind of stuff out as a poster or something that we can display, like in the town of Lee and town of Greenville, and just so it's just public information that's out there, that if they don't have a way to have a website to display it, at least people coming in, it would be displayed, and they can see it, and give them,
Yeah, we need to cast a broader net as possible to
right.
make sure everything gets covered.
Okay.
'Cause you don't know how many times I hear out sometimes, well, I never knew about that. I
Yeah.
mean, no matter how much you try to saturate the social medias and news outlets and everything else, you're always, well, I didn't know about that.
That's right.
But on the back of the Dropbox, if you just take Dropbox out, they return it to my office.
Okay.
What my fear is that they're gonna drop it in this box here, or the box here at Tommy's, or
And
something
then
like that,
they'll
and it'll never find its way to where it needs to
Yeah.
be at. Don't want that to happen to somebody.
All right, and then, a little further up, it says, THF and DSI will be on site, or be available from Monday through Friday. And the phone number listed here, 850-815-1261, is the direct number to THF. So any phone calls we get, we will be able to, handle
I
that.
don't know, I don't see it.
Where you, where?
It's about the middle of the page where the
Yes.
bold starts.
Yeah, in bold letters,
Information and assistance.
Okay.
right below the, online applications. And those are our office hours, so, and then pretty much any time after that, we will be available as well. All right, and below is where, if you go down to where it says eligible applicants who submit complete applications will be selected for an award by an independent contractor. If you go down a little bit further, it describes our process of selection. So pretty much the process will be to sequentially number all of the submittals on Monday, that October 5th, and, but not necessarily in order of timestamp when we get them, so it'll just be going through the applications. And, like I mentioned before, applicants who did not receive PPP will be prioritized. If the request exceeds the approved funding level, then pretty much all applicants who did not receive PPP will be given priority and placed in a random generator, to pretty much make it fair. And the applicants will be notified of their award on November 4th. This is open to change depending on what the board decides. And, the awards will be dispersed at the clerk's office via a paper check, which can also be altered if you guys want.
Paper check.
And is the date of November 4th accurate? Is that okay?
That's just the date you're notifying them of their award.
Right.
Necessarily when I'm writing the check.
Next, we have the small grant program application instructions, and this is pretty much just instructions for the small business owner to review. You can review that as well. Next, we have the application, list pretty much basic general information for the business. We do have the SBIN number as well listed on there, the number of independent contractors, and we also have a means for them to attach any additional documentation for explanations if needed. All right, next we can move to the eligibility and certification form. Okay. Pretty much we have a few items here highlighted that we want to solidify. I'll start with the first one. Well, we already got through that February 29th date, actually. The second one basically says that the business is registered on sunbiz.org. Is that a criteria you want to add? Okay. Keep it.
One thing with Sunbiz now, that's for corporations and that
That's
kind of
limit.
thing. If you just have a lady that's a hairdresser in her house, she's not going to be registered on Sunbiz.
Yeah, I think that should be struck, because that's gonna limit a lot of small businesses or.
Just end it where the highlighting starts.
Okay.
Yeah, just the boundaries of Madison County.
Because the next one covers if they have a business license in Madison County, so that would cover.
Okay. All right. We went through the employees. We have that one. Okay, and this is basically just a repetition of what we went through earlier.
Now, on the receive less than 25,000 funds.
Yes, sir.
Was that 500? I thought we stated 100,000.
Right, we did. So that's what I was saying as far as it being the repetition. So I will make the change, and that'll be, leave that at 100,000.
And you see 500,000.
Right. And then we have the last criteria for them to have filed a IRS tax return for 2019. The next page highlights the documentation that we need to receive from the applicant. Pretty much standard documents, W-9 form, staffing documentation showing the employees. Also, you have your 941 summary form, 1096 summary form for your independent contractors, sole proprietor statement, and employee roster. Next, we mentioned the active state business registration form on Sunbiz, or a local business registration license, or other documentation just proving that you are a legitimate business.
Just be the local business. We're striking Sunbiz.
Or.
You got local business.
I'm just saying, if you just strike up to the Sunbiz, just put business license documentation.
Okay, I'll make that change.
Yeah. Y'all agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna go with just local business registration license or other documentation.
Under the proof,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, so the proof of the next one is the proof that the business has experienced a business disruption. For non-essential businesses, the proof that the business was closed, or for essential businesses, basically income statements from March to June 2019 versus 2020, basically just demonstrating a difference in revenue, so that we'll be able to see.
could the proof be something like as simple as, I'm a hairdresser, the governor closed, with this order, the governor closed hair salon?
I think that would be sufficient, yes.
I mean, that would be enough proof.
Right. Pretty much, we just want to be able to determine that you suffered an impact during COVID.
You had to have them provide their revenues from March, April, May of 19 to March, April, May of 20 may be a little bit, other than like Billy just said, that having the order at closing them may be sufficient. Mr. Chairman, I think you have a question.
Mr. Chairman, in our case, we didn't open until January 1st, but we have data and documentation that shows the business loss from March when COVID started to today.
That'll be sufficient. Okay, then we have the proof of Madison County physical location, proof of Madison County residency.
Let me stop you real quick
Yes, sir.
on the Madison County resident, because Mr. Fairclough comes to mind, owns a business here in Madison, but it's requesting a driver's license or voter ID card from Madison County, and he's not a county resident.
So I guess in that case, we put other documentation if necessary. That way, if he has something else, that's.
I knew that was one that caught my attention.
Okay.
Well, one thing though, I think y'all could probably do is the SunBiz, right?
Yes, sir.
Because their SunBiz registration is gonna show a Madison County address.
Okay.
So
Because it's a corporation.
I just didn't want confusion if he had to have a Madison voter's card or driver's license.
I'll change the language on that one as well.
Okay.
Following, and then the remaining items are just for, said they're applicable for the PPP option.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, and I think the clerk brought this up, we probably at the bottom of these documents need a statement that says that these documents will become a public record when submitted, because everybody kind of needs to know that up front, you know, that's an issue. We don't want people surprised by that.
Sure.
At the beginning of the application, let me say, any documentation provided during this process is subject to public record.
So this application and any supporting documents
It's subject to public record.
will be public records. Yeah.
And it may not be bad to have a disclaimer that's subject to availability of funds that released,
Absolutely.
because this is not guaranteed until we get the release
Well,
from the.
it's not a contract. It's
Right.
not they apply and then they are guaranteed they're gonna get money.
But I would like them to know that it's contingent upon us, the money being released.
And the reason I keep bringing the public records out is I think that you would be very surprised to see the number of bulk public record requests I get for different things. And something like this would be right up the alley of somebody wanting bulk records, because then they have data that they can approach businesses with certain things. So this is kind of stuff they look for, the bulk requesters. They're not trying to pick on anybody's business or anything, they're just trying to get data. And I get quite a few of those for different things, and this would be a prime example of it.
Okay, so that's pretty much the Small Business Assistance Grant Program plan. And the following packet is the PPP option and also list out the eligibility requirements. There's only a few of those that we want to go over. It'll be immediately following the grant program plan. It says PPP eligibility requirements.
Okay.
Okay, criteria, the requirement's pretty much the same. We'll go through and this is for the PPP application for the individuals applying for this assistance. Says the business has received less than $25,000 in funds covered by insurance or reimbursement from the PPP program, EIDL, or Florida Bridge loan, excuse me. So that threshold, $25,000, do we want to change, or do we want to change this requirement at all?
So this is, I guess I need to clarify, does this related back to the original 100,000?
So pretty much the option in the first plan where it had the three options, and then the PPP plan.
Right.
This will be related to.
PPP option only.
Well, yes, the PPP option only. So basically, just determining how much assistance they receive before we determine if we're going to add them in the pool as well. So I think the 100,000 would be a little high, maybe, and 25,000 would kind of get those businesses that didn't necessarily get as much as some others. So, but we're welcome to change it if you want.
What you think? You probably got the biggest, in your district. What's your thoughts?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around exactly what this means. Business receive less than $25,000 covered by insurance or reimbursement. See in here in these options over here, it says they've received less than 100,000 in payroll protection program, but here it's saying less than 25,000. So I guess I'm trying to.
This would be the PPP option only. Remember, it's only, you can either apply for one or the other. So if I'm a business that, go ahead.
I think if you can tie it back to this sheet, it's gonna make more sense.
That's what I'm trying to.
I think we're at option 2 right now, right?
The PPP option is pretty much going to be a separate application by itself.
It's not included in this sheet?
Yeah, it'll be,
Okay.
we have options 1, 2, and 3, and the PPP option. But pretty much you can either go with PPP, or you can, if you receive PPP, you're gonna go with that option, or if you didn't receive anything, you have the option to go with one.
And I guess what's confusing is 1 and 2 have limitations on the amount of PPP. Under number 4, the PPP option, there is no similar limitation, but on here, it's got a limitation.
Right, okay, so
it,
you can add the limitation for the 25,000 to this, pretty much. So we can either change that, scratch it, or
Maybe a little low on the 25,000 limit on some of these businesses with a lot of employees. Maybe just a little low.
Chair, I think that last week when we were here, Mr. Reeves asked a question to, what's their name? Nicole. And he said, how many businesses have received PPP under a certain amount? And I think that amount was $100,000. I'm going off memory, I don't really remember. And she said there were so many, and it amounted to $3.9 million worth of PPP money that had come out under that threshold. What I'm saying is you may want to lift it to that threshold, because I mean, it was only 117 businesses or something like that. I mean, it was in that range of 100 businesses.
My concern is I think we need to raise it, that 25 may limit some of the larger businesses.
I would agree, and not even larger businesses, just smaller businesses with larger payrolls.
Exactly.
Professional businesses, things like that, you know, you may want to look at those too.
I would think we need, myself, I think we need to raise that.
200,000.
What's the board?
I would be more in favor of, certainly raising it. Could we go to the 100,000 or not? That's.
Well, 100,000 still going to.
Well, the PPP is just subject to what's left.
Yeah, that's the leftover money.
You're going to go through the option 1, 2, 3, and anything left, then you have PPP. Then you see what comes in, and you just, which in my mind, you put that proportional to to what they did, what they received previously.
And that's like we changed this over here on the PP option to subject to available funds,
Right.
you know.
So I think we need to move it to the 100,000. That would just be my thought.
I'll make that correct.
What are the disadvantages of doing that to 100,000? Because you've already went through the first, and this is now.
Right, I mean, like Mr. Washington mentioned, basically, this is just what we're gonna have left, so.
What we have left.
Right, so I mean, it may be a lot, maybe a little, depending on what we go through in round one.
If you move that threshold from 25 to 100, you're dividing what's left among a larger group, moving it to 100, right? So if the threshold is 25, whatever you've got left, those guys are gonna get a higher percentage, because they're getting a bigger share of the pie.
Right.
Go to 100, everybody's gonna get a little bit less, because you've got more people
Well,
drawing out.
we're able to reach
But
out.
you're covering the bigger,
More,
But
you're
casting a wider,
distributing it more broadly.
That's what I would.
that was my thought process.
A little more.
Yeah. Availability to distribute it out to more.
All right, the next highlighted item says business is current on all payroll taxes, sales and RT tax, property, and federal income taxes. And also, I know we wanted to keep the payroll forms submitted to the IRS for 2019.
Once again, is that going to affect, this business that just went into business in January of 2020?
No, so in
I
that
mean,
case.
they had a prior business, but this is an addition.
Right, so that'll be one of the things, like they may add additional explanations. Okay. And as we go through, we'll be able to. Are there any more questions so far?
When we say the current on the payroll taxes and all that, what kind of documentation are we talking about? Are we talking about the business just certifies that, or are we talking about produced documents?
Produce documents preferably. So those documents listed.
It's not a separate.
Right. So what I'll do is, I'll add the documents applicable to that particular requirement in that requirement.
Now, when you say pay federal income taxes, you're talking about income tax returns again?
Yes.
For that?
So that, and then you have your reemployment, tax returns and your sales tax, that can all be shown on that 941 form.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I-
Yes, sir.
I thought the idea behind PPP when we originally looked at it last time we
Right.
brought this up
To limit.
was that people would be limiting their exposure to public records. And if I've already received a PPP as a business, this stuff should have already been checked. You know what I'm saying? And then all I would have to do is certify I received X amount of dollars in PPP. You know what I'm saying? And in that way, all I'm providing to them and to my office is a certification that I've received money instead of my tax returns, my payroll tax, all that stuff that's public records.
Yes. So.
Well, at the end of the day, if this type of stuff is audited, we still want to show that funds were expended.
And what that does too is that also allows more quickly for them to approve a application. You know, and get this money out a little quicker if that's the case.
Right. Also listed, we have the documentation that needs to be provided for the PPP plan. So here we have the W-9 form, a copy of the deposit slip for PPP funds, and a copy of the letter note from the PPP loan. So it's not as much personal information for the business.
That's right here.
That sounds good.
It's about 6 pages of the
It's
PPP
after the
application.
application.
Yes.
It says they're
Yeah,
going to
that's all business out.
Well, that's the
So that's
PPP only.
contradicting what they're saying.
All right.
And what we need is, I would, while we're on that, when you're talking about just the PPP only application, we need to make sure that whatever changes we made on the other
Right.
is applicable here as well.
Right.
You know, like, not necessarily addressing it to Billy's website and all other stuff.
comment, or the tax returns going to be required or not? Because I think some businesses, they may not say it publicly, but they're going to call the commissioner and push back on that.
I would agree. Like I said, I own a business too, and I would way rather just certify I got this PPP money and take my chances with it being less than $5,000 if that's the case, than I would get my tax returns and all that, and all of a sudden everybody
Put my business on.
can see everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
saying from a business owner perspective, and if that
And it's
much
simple.
easier for me to certify, hey, I'm gonna do that instead of spending all my time trying to take a couple dollars.
and it simplifies the process
Right.
tremendously.
So we'll tax those, just scratch the requirements for the taxes required.
And what I'd probably do instead of requiring the returns is a certification, make them certify, just say, I hereby certify that I have incurred on all my taxes.
Right.
You know.
So the question on that, does that still indemnify the board or the county should a review saying that we expended funds that were not allowed and required to be reimbursed?
Well, now, remember, the indemnification that we've been talking about before, and what I've got here for you, is a sub-grantee agreement. So that would work like if we gave money to the city, and the city didn't spend it right, the city's gonna pay us back. I don't know that there's gonna be an indemnification on this part of it, because what we're doing is we're giving them applications, we're saying this is what we need, and they're filling it out and giving us stuff back. I don't know that that's gonna work. It does have an
And
indemnification.
their certification, base form number 8, it says,
And my next thing was, even like with our sub-grantee agreements where we say indemnification, remember, an indemnification is only good if you've got a good solvent business there that can pay the money back.
Right. Well, I certainly want to keep applications streamlined and simple as possible.
All right, and we have the, pretty much the certification form that will need to be signed by the business owner or authorized agent. So, are there any more recommendations or questions regarding the package or application?
And I guess to follow up on their question, I think the commission wants to keep the application as streamlined as possible, but no, they don't want to do anything that puts them at undue risk for having to not surviving an audit. So
Right.
is it y'all's recommendation that doing it that way is okay, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, we just wanted to solidify the highlighted items so that we can go back and make the plan final. The recommendations that we provided are based on what we heard from you all. So we're just trying to satisfy you all pretty much as well and make sure that we get as much money to the community as possible.
And we appreciate that, and I want to echo what Commissioner Davis has said, that, we want to streamline it, but we also, ask for your recommendations. If we're doing something that we need to be herded back in, but we're depending on you guys as well.
Right, so pretty much, Al and I today, we'll go back and go through the plan based on the feedback that we heard. We'll also go back to our team and discuss some of the items that we had a little discussion on, and see if we can have any different suggestions or better recommendations to bring back to you all, so that we can keep this process streamlined.
We want to stay in the middle of the highway, we don't want to deviate all that.
Right.
We don't want to get into ditches, because that's what get in trouble.
Right.
Okay?
That's all, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, at this time, I guess I'm going to turn this over to Billy Washington on these options on the funding on the initial disbursement of funds. Does anyone need a break?
Yes.
Let's take about a 10-minute pause. I'd like to call this meeting back to order as we discuss the, expenditures on the first, wave, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Washington to take over. Each one of you have the, printout in front of you.
All right, Mr. Chair, I sent out to everybody yesterday a series of spreadsheets that are up now in the meeting, so anybody who's called in can see them too. I just want to make sure. If you look at page 1 and 2, those are the incurred expenses from the stakeholders that gave us their incurred expenses last week. If you remember last week, the way it was laid out was, here is the City of Madison's incurred and the City of Madison's future expense. What I did was I took everybody's incurred expense, put it in one spreadsheet so you can see who it was, what they had incurred. And there's 2 changes to this from what you saw last week. Number 1, if you go down about the middle of the first page where it says Madison County, and then there's in the sub-stakeholders, the DOCC, that is the management cost for DSI and Thomas Howell Ferguson. So if you remember that cost they want us to hold back was $263 and some change, right? So they sent to me their invoice for their work thus far. That is $11,682.17. So I put that as an incurred cost, and then that management is a future cost. And the reason I put it on the incurred sheet is because, if you recall last week, they wanted us to hold back or reserve that entire $264,000 out of the initial $810,000 that we're getting, right? That's why it went on there. The only other change is down at the very bottom of the first sheet, Madison County Sheriff. The undersheriff got me an actual number there. He had a placeholder number of $2,000 that you saw last week. This $4,946.26 is an actual incurred cost. And he just got that, so I figured I'd go ahead and throw it in, so that way we're dealing with a real number there. Those are the only changes on sheet 1 and sheet 2 from what you saw last week and that. So sheet 3, 4, and 5 are those same agencies and county departments and their future costs. These are costs that have not been incurred yet. So it just allows you to see it all in one sheet.
And these are the ones we went through page by page and approved.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, they are. So, I'm sorry, I skipped something there. If you go back to page 2, the incurred cost, if you include all of holding back what Thomas Howell Ferguson and DSI, it's got a $1,026,930 and some change. That's all of the incurred costs thus far with the reservation of Thomas Howell Ferguson and DSI's money. All right.
We've only got 810, so that's y'all got to decide what you want to spend. What of that $1,026,000 you want to spend out of the 810?
All right. So what I did, go ahead. Yes, sir.
No, I was gonna say, but if you take the future DSI figure out, where does that?
Well, what I got a couple options, and whenever we go through the options, you'll see what my thinking was, and maybe it makes sense to you guys. So if you go to page 6, that's option A. And so the way I approached this was a couple ways. I approached it as, what if we make all of these stakeholders and their incurred costs whole, and then see what's left, right? So option A makes all of the people who have incurred costs, it makes them whole, with the exception of DSI and Thomas Howell Ferguson. What it does, it takes, again, that's in the middle, or lower middle of page 6, Madison County DOCC is the sub-stakeholder. If you go over, it pays all the way to option A, that's the furthest column on the right. It pays them the $11,682.17 that they have incurred thus far and invoiced me for. And then it reserves, so you pay everybody, you pay them $11,000, there's a leftover amount. I reserved that leftover amount towards them. And that leftover amount was $36,314.47. Right? So option A makes everybody whole, pays them their costs thus far, and reserves another 3 times what we paid them essentially. All right? So that was the thinking behind option A. So whenever you go to the other option, starting at page 8.
But just real quick, but sure. On option A, page 7, the 810 would be if we do go with option A, would be the 810.
Exactly. I made it be the 810 by reserving the leftovers to them.
Okay. So make sure that that would expend the 810 that we've already got
Yes, sir.
and make everybody whole and
With
with a $34,000 reserve for DSI.
Yeah, a 36,000.
$36,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Misunderstood.
Okay, so option B, starting on page 8. So what I did was make all the stakeholders whole and, cut DSI. That's what I did in option A. Option B, what I did was I started looking at, what if we gave DSI a fixed amount of money, a percentage of their overall, what they bill. Option B is giving DSI 1/2 of their reserved amount. So in other words, their total amount was $264,323. That was their expected expenditure, all right, whenever they gave us their proposal. This is reserving $132,161.50 of that amount, and then paying DSI their $11,000 figure out of that money. All right, as you can see it right there in same place, middle lower of page 8. Pays $11,000, it reserves the remainder of that $131,000 or $132,000, which it reserves $120,000. What happens then, though, is that you have to cut something, right? Cut one of the other stakeholders. So what I looked at was, well, my interest is for the county, right? I'm a county clerk, not a city clerk, not a Ability First clerk or anything like that. So I made sure the county was made whole. The cities were made whole, the municipalities. The school system in North Florida College, their ask was made whole, and I held Ability First and the ARC out, right? Because they're non-governmental. That's the way I looked at that. I mean, you could do whatever you want to do. Well, what that does when you do that, take the request out, is that it only spends $799,075.74. That's at the bottom of page 9. So what happens is there's still $11,500 that's unexpended, that if you went with option B, I'd have to figure out where do you want to put that $11,000 in. All right, so again, I left out Ability First and the ARC. My suggestion, we just throw it into them somehow. We can prorate it out or something like that. Option C, which starts on page 10, holds a quarter of DSI's reserve amount, which is $66,080.75, and again, pays their $11,000 out of that quarter. And what happens then is that you still have to cut somewhere, right? So I cut there instead at the education, the North Florida College and the district, the school district. And the reason why I put it there is because they may have received some CARES money already for things, so I figured it made sense to cut them and catch them in another round if we needed to. What that does, though, is that option C spends $814,000 rather than the $810, so you'd still have to come up with about $3,484 in cuts somewhere along the spreadsheet. So if you go with option C, we're still going to have to figure out where we cut. My suggestion would be try to cut the reserve amount for DSI to make up that amount. Option D is probably going to be the least palatable, but I wanted to show it out there anyway. Under option D, it begins at page 12. And in option D, I withheld 100% of what DSI's reserve amount was. So this would be me just holding on to the $264,323 and cutting Ability First, cutting the ARC totally out, cutting North Florida College totally out, cut the school board totally out. When you do that, you're still almost $106,000 over that $810 figure that we have, the money we actually have. So you'd have to figure out where to cut $106,000 at. And again, I'm the county clerk, not the city's clerk. So I, of course, kept the county whole and cut the municipality. But it would require an 80.65% cut to the municipality's ask. So in other words, over on the side, you can see on the right-hand side of page 12, the city of Madison, including the police department, their total ask was $125,933. It would cut them to $24,300. The town of Greenville, right now on their incurred costs, their ask was $4,800. It would cut them to $928. The town of Lee, their incurred cost so far was $740. It would cut them to $143. like I said, that's probably the least palatable, but I wanted to show what it would be if we held, DSI's reserve amount totally, and then, go from there. I've spoken with the representatives from DSI. They are, amenable to option A, to us holding back. I mean, it's up to what you guys really want to do, but, or if you want to do something different, ask me and I can try to get it priced out for you. But personally, like I said, if it were a matter of opinion for me, I think option A is the best. It makes everybody whole, reserves another 3 months worth of the billing at the current rate for DSI.
Any questions of the clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jerome from the city. I'm trying to follow the recommendations given by the clerk. Is it possible that Shirlene could probably send me over a hard copy of that? And so far, we've been following along. It doesn't sound bad, but I just want to see it in hard copy form, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, Billy, we'll make sure you get one, Jerome.
All righty, super, thanks.
Yes, sir. My concern, I talked to Billy a little bit earlier, was just a little bit of concern about reserving, on option A. Sounds like a good option, but I'm just concerned that I don't want us to get caught in 3 months down the road and be spent this money in the second wave of money not forthcome, and we wind up having to come out of pocket with money to pay the bills that maybe DSI.
Well, I have a suggestion, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What we can do, DSI has billed me already for the work they incurred. I'm gonna probably speak out of turn, but I would imagine they could bill us monthly, and I could keep coming out of that amount I've reserved and keep you updated on whether or not, that reserve's gonna cover, or, if we have to. My thinking is that if we're not getting the other 75%, then they're not gonna be working.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Exactly what
I
was
don't.
thinking.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think what we're doing will cover it, and if they bill me and it's gonna deplete that, I'll let you guys know in advance. And that way we can figure out if we gotta float it and then ask for reimbursement out of that other 75 or whatever.
You know, I'm saying if the state doesn't release that other 75%, then there's really not additional
Job
to be done.
Correct.
Any more thoughts or, comments?
Well, just a thought, I just wanted to reinforce, because what we're gonna be doing right now, in the meantime, till we get that 75% done, we're gonna be working on these applications, we're gonna be doing all this other stuff. So you're saying that what we're set aside, that additional $36,000 for the next 90 days or so, that would probably cover the work that's being done on that part of the project, applications and.
I mean, again, I'm probably speaking out of turn for them, but they spent a week here with 4 people
Right.
in this room,
Right.
8 hours a day, and that billing was $11,000. I mean, I don't know what goes on beyond that, but I mean, if it's $20,000 for the next month, we're gonna know within the next month whether we're gonna be able to spend that 75% or not. You know what I mean? So there's still plenty there to do something.
Mr. Chair, in
Yes,
that
sir.
same vein, while people are filling out these applications, and if they have questions, will DSI be accessible to help?
Yes.
Yeah, they will be here.
Yeah, that's what
They'll be here 2 days as
Yeah.
a workshop to answer with a small business.
Yeah, and Ms. Pickles just brought this up. This is still contingent on people getting us the documentation, signing the sub-grantee agreement. There's things like that still have to happen. It's not like I'm gonna magically write checks as soon as the meeting's over. There's still a couple steps people have to go through.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, that's just more money that I'm gonna end up putting into that reserve for
Right,
DSI
reserve
line
fund.
item.
On one thing, and I just want to, on ARC, I see where we're looking at $82,105 for payroll-related COVID. Did we know if they got any payroll protection money?
I don't know that, but that's something that they'll have to, like I said, on that sub-grantee agreement, they'll have to do a document.
Yeah, because this is already added in under incurred expenses, so.
But they'll have to document it. It'll come out when they before they get the money.
Yes, yes.
You know, that would be subject, if they've already gotten PPP money, then this would be held back.
And this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever, I know when my office submitted our incurred expenses, we had to submit a copy of a check, and, I mean, it wasn't just here's an invoice, it was, here's where we paid it. You know, those kind of things like that. So it's in depth what you're.
There's some checks and balances.
Exactly.
Okay, gentlemen, then you've heard all the options. Any more discussions or questions or thoughts on, which option we may need to pursue?
Mr. Chair, one, I really appreciate Billy taking the time and putting these options together. That really makes it better understandable. And I would be in line with going with option A. That would be my motion to approve option A.
Motion made by Commissioner Davis to go with option A. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Martin. Any discussion?
One thing that I will say, and Billy said if we did go with option A, that you could pay them monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 4-0. And I do want to echo that, Billy. I thank you very much for, this really helped us on these forums when you, made it a lot easier to, I think I can probably speak for the whole board. It made it a lot easier for us to do.
I appreciate it, but it is my job, so at the same time, I'm doing
Well,
my job.
we sometimes we don't let you know enough how what we appreciate you and your staff doing, so we do.
Thank you very much. I will relay it.
If you would, please. Anything else that needs to come before the board?
Commissioners, just keep in mind there are people and even departments who are already calling and asking, okay, so when do I start ordering stuff? You know, with this money being expended by December 30th, if it's going to be here, so just be thinking about how you want to handle that as far as the remaining 75 that hasn't been made available yet.
I think one thing, we talked about it, but we definitely wanted on our flyers or social media or website that this contingent upon the funds being released. So we're working in that, we're assuming it's going to be released, but.
We spent months just getting us 25% release.
Sure. So they don't, I think we need to make sure that the public knows that this money is not a guaranteed thing, it's contingent on the funds being released.
Well, and yes, definitely then, but also, I mean, I've got departments, other constitutional officers saying, hey, if the board's approved this plan and we have this project, when can we start ordering stuff and getting stuff going to make sure that it's done by December 30th?
Let's just make sure they all know.
I would do like what I'm having to do with other responsibilities is just trying to have the vendors available and with their understanding too that, I mean, I'm cutting requisitions, but I'm not, you want to be able to release a PO until we have funds available. I think that's immature on us if we start issuing POs with money we're hoping to get.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a fiscal responsibility for us to do that. So, and that's what I would say. If they ask me, that's what I'm gonna tell them.
know the Fed's a little bit
That's
lag
it.
sometimes.
That's it.
Yep, we got one more action item.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
extra copies here. This is we've been talking about the fact that we're going to be giving, money, y'all just approved, money, for instance, to the cities and the school board and all that. What we've got is, we're going to have an agreement with them called the subrecipient agreement. And the agreement, the point of the agreement is that they understand that this is coming from CARES Act. They understand that it's, bound by all those federal rules and regulations. They understand that if we get audited later, and a federal agency says that whatever this expenditure was, it doesn't comply, they understand they're going to pay the money back and all of that. What I've done is the folks at the SI were nice enough, they provided a copy of the agreement in Lafayette County. I've taken that agreement
and I've done it in a strike-through version here. And what the agreement does, and let me just show you, you've got a copy there in front of you, is you've got a title page there, and that title page will be set out between the county and whoever the recipient is. It identifies the name and the contract number and everything. It identifies what they're getting. So you would probably, with this version of the agreement, you might actually do an agreement for both the dispersal that they're going to get right now and then a different one for future dispersals, because see, they're all set up on the, showing what they actually got. Then you flip, so that's the title page, and then you get into, starting on page 3, the actual contract part of it that goes through the whereas clauses set out. You know, the big thing is you want to make sure everyone understands this CARES Act money that's coming from the federal government. We go into the general terms that it's the coronavirus relief fund, et cetera, the terms. Section 4 is sets out the amount they're going to get, that they're agreeing it is eligible, they're going to be incurring the costs, et cetera. Let's see, E of the accounting, they're going to have a sufficient accounting system to keep track of everything. F, duplication of benefits, they recognize this can't, they can't double dip, they can't ask for a reimbursement twice from 2 different places. Section 5, processing of the reimbursement requests, which in our case is just going to be them asking us. It's not that like with the city, they're asking us for the city's expenses back. It's not like we're giving money to the city and the city's going to further disperse it to other people. So that's why most of that's been cut. Section 6, again, payment subject to availability of funds. I think, Mr. Chairman, you brought that up. Reporting requirements, where they have to be able to keep their records and be able to report this. Section 8, indemnification, where to the fullest extent of permitted by law, subrecipients shall indemnify, defend, protect, hold the county's officers free and harmless from claims, cause of actions, et cetera. That's if we had to pay back money, that's saying they would indemnify us for the money that they got on that. And then after that, it's more or less boilerplate. You've got in there standard default provisions. I think that's about it, and most of the rest of this is requirements that have to go into all federal grants. I think that's it, unless y'all have any questions.
I do not, Mr. Reeves. Does that just suit you, your
Yeah.
recommendation to the board to accept that?
It is my recommendation for the board to accept it. I think it certainly sets out the proper relationship between the county and the cities and the other governmental entities, is that we're making the funds available, but if for some reason those funds, through an audit or whatever, they disallow that use, we're not guaranteeing that. And I mean, that needs to be made plain to everybody, that the county's passing through those funds. If it's ever not allowed, the funds have to come back.
Any questions or comments, Mr. Reeves?
We need to approve this, correct?
I have one question. So this agreement then has to go to the city, Madison City, Greenville City, of Lee board meetings for them to approve the agreement.
I think it needs to be approved before they get a check.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. I'm not gonna write checks until I get this agreement back.
What I would, I mean, I think you can write checks. What I would send that to them along with the amount and say, when you get back this agreement, then we will really deliver the check.
Okay, I just trying to make that clear to
Yes.
our online listeners that they understand that.
And that's why it's prepared in blank, so y'all are approving the form of the agreement and telling the clerk to go ahead and use that when he's dispersing the fund. Now, and like we've said before, remember, with any kind of an indemnity agreement like this, it's only as good as the entity, right? So if you had and I wouldn't worry not so much with our governmental entities or our established entities, but in the future, you know, if you're giving a grant to an entity or a business that may not be here in a year or two, we still want them to sign the agreement, but it may not do you a lot of good. That's my point in saying that. So you really don't think it's armor that, you know,
Sure.
that can't fail. You know, it's only as good as the entity. And again, that probably doesn't apply much with the ones we have y'all have already authorized dispersal because those are established.
Any more discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jerome from the city.
Yes, sir, Mr. Jerome.
What are the timelines on the agreement or reaching the city and taking it before our commissioner's office would be the correct route to take? So, are any timelines?
As soon as you get it to me, all I gotta do is insert this, from the, spreadsheet, the expenses, change a couple of numbers and make sure I got the right amount that we're dispersing to them. And then I can walk it over, I don't know when you're gonna get it to me, but I can walk it over pretty much that same day.
Jerome, it'll be in a very timely manner because we're moving pretty quickly on these things, so we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
I would assume end of the week, first of next week at the latest.
Okay, all right, that sounds fair. Just want to make sure we have enough time to make our commissioners privy of it and get them to approve it and get the mayor's signature on the agreement. That was my point.
We're moving quickly and we'll get it to you as soon as possible.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I had a motion to approve.
Second.
A second. A motion by Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Martin. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carries 4-0.
And so, Mr. Chairman, and part of that motion was the clerk's directed not to disperse funds until we get the agreement signed. Now, if we give it to someone and they want to make changes, what will have to happen is we would have to come back and present that to the board before the clerk can disperse money, so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Cheryl, do you have anything else coming forward? Billy?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed, do you have anything? Commissioner comments? Mark? Mr. Davis? Mr. Moore?
Nothing until our next regular meeting, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? We're stand adjourned.